So I wanted to look at QQQ. This is the ETF that covers the top 100 companies. Last time we looked at this was on June 15th, so about a month and a half ago. At the time, it was trading at 370. It looks like it's now at 372. So we'll see kind of what's been going on there. We noted it was in an uptrend, but we also had it as a resistance. We had it marked in red, and I can just share this. So we have QQQ right here at 370. Again, I said it's at 372 now. The fact that it's red uh, and then it traded flat apparently over this month and a half is almost confirmation that, yeah, it was overpriced there. So we'll see if now's a good time to pick this one up. But we'll get into that during the technical analysis. So for right now, let's just go into just what's been going on with this ETF over the past month and a half. So to start, and there's not that much news here. This is all we had. So apparently last week's, so this goes back all the way till June. So just to kind of catch us up, we had last week, and when I say that I mean back in June, we can see at the top it says this was from last month. Last week's rate hike pause is being attributed to the Fed addressing lags in economic data, not putting a cork in rate hikes for this cycle altogether. Currently, 3/4 of analysts surveyed believe the next hike will come at the Fed's next meeting in 5 weeks, which brings us up more to today. And then down here, we notice that they did, in fact, raise rates to 5.25% to 5.5% at the July 2023 meeting. That actually just happened last week. So, yeah, they paused. They didn't do any rates back in June. July, they ultimately did decide. This wasn't surprising to a lot of people. So, they kept pace, I suppose. Next, we also had a revision in their like quarter 1 data, and I think this is what they were referring to. They wanted the data to catch up and make sure they had the most accurate information in order to determine, do they need to increase rates. Ultimately, they did decide that. But yeah, the main things that changed were Q1 GDP jumped unexpectedly to plus 2.0%, and new jobless claims sank to their lowest levels. So not big changes, but still changes potentially in the positive direction. People are filing less jobless claims, and GDP is going up. Both things you would imagine means the economy is getting things together, but we'll just keep following it along. It's ultimately their decision. So we'll see how it plays out. So that covers the news. That catches us up, at least in the broad terms. Let me get this out. So yeah, on to the technical analysis. As I mentioned earlier, it was trading at 370 before. And if we find that, that's right around here, this green candle. Let me move this over. Right here, right at the top pretty much, is roughly 370. It looks like it's actually in the wick part of the candle. So just slightly over. I'm guessing we checked this out midweek, maybe like a Thursday, and then it pulled back in Friday. But generally since then, it's traded sideways, but at an incline for sure. Like we're seeing a general consensus that it's going up more than pulling back. But overall, going from 370 to 372, not the biggest move. I mean, considering if we just go back to like mid-May up to mid-June, we would have saw it go from like 330s all the way up to 370. So this is very minor. If we pull back, we do see this uptrend still intact. It's above where I would personally like it. Like right now, at the end of the week, to be at the bottom of the channel would have been at 341. So we're way above that. But what sometimes happens, and I'm going to consider adding this, is pick up the uptrend. I'm not sure if that's the case necessarily with this one, but what could be happening is we just need to add in another uptrend line. And so this would kind of give us a sense that, okay, maybe at that top of that range, that is the resistance point, and more towards this middle purple line, that would be our fair value point, which in this case, because it seems to be falling in that upper half, that might signal a buy to us. We're still not there either way. It's still just slightly overpriced. Ideally, and I think I'm going to just change the colors here to, that'll be blue, this will be green, meaning buy, and then this one would be red, signaling resistance. Let's see, can I pull this? I'm just going to make this line a little bit longer so it matches with everything. So yeah, that's pretty much how I'm seeing it. We might see this. So with that added line, I would now be, for this week specifically, I'd be looking at like 362 all the way down to 340s. That would be the ideal. It being on the upper half. Not a big fan of that. Ultimately, in terms of like, I guess a buy point, or I guess maybe before we do that, the note that we left ourselves is uptrend since, it says 8 months, but I'm just gonna update that to uptrend since October in 2022. Yes, that's still in effect. It's accelerating, possible support at 310. That is way back there. So it's accelerating. Let's see. I like the thought. It's accelerating since probably like May of 23. So it's accelerating the uptrend since May of 2023. Could hit new all times. Not much resistance in the way. Yeah, so that, I suppose that's true. There really isn't much. Ultimately, once it gets up to like the 405, the previous all-time highs, I do imagine it might struggle a little bit to go from like, say 390 to 405. It might hang out in that range. But then if it continues forward, which if this uptrend continues for the rest of the year, then yeah, it should just go right through it before year end. But I imagine it really just depends on when we get there. If it gets into that 390 to 405 range in say the next month, then yeah, I could see it trading sideways for the rest of the year in that range, and I wouldn't be too surprised about it. Or if it just continues the uptrend real gradually, gets into that range in say end of November into December, then yeah, we might actually break above that. I wouldn't be surprised about that either. All just depends on timing. So to go back to the question, buy points, it looks like I had 290 marked. There was definitely some supports. We are so far past that I'm just going to remove that one. I also had 310. That was the point of interest for me. That was this secondary blue point, which I guess I just picked it because I noticed a little bit of flattening here in like 315. If I scroll back out, again, there was some support around 310. At this point, we're so past that, I'm actually going to remove that one. I also had 330. Not sure why I picked 330. That must have been the channel. That must have been the bottom of the channel was 330. If I look back, yeah, that's roughly 330 in there. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll update the 330 to what the bottom of the channel would be in roughly a month's time. That'll give us just some time to see how it plays out. So that would be about 350. So the 330 is going to update to 350. And I'm also going to add in 373. I feel like that would be that blue line, so like fair value. If it were to pull back to about 373, and I'm picking that because, again, focusing on the blue line, this week particularly, it'd be 362, but fast forwarding about a month, that'll be roughly when I catch up on this one. That'd be 373, so it's right there, giving me the feeling that it's going to be a fair value. In terms of resistance, not much at this point. 395 would be kind of where it was meeting resistance here. Ultimately, it did reach 405, so I would say between 390 and 405. For now, I'll just put in, it looks like 395 here, which is already logged in. And then if we fast forward a month, just like we did with our green and blue lines, that would bring us to about 396. So I'll just keep in the one resistance point of 395, and that kind of gives us a heads up there. I think that wraps this one up. So if you want to add any insight that you saw on your end, just to kind of help us understand this one and make sure we get the best buy, feel free to let me know. Or if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer that. But just a quick recap. So QQQ, I upgraded it to fair value. I'd be okay with picking it up at this price. Wouldn't be a great deal in my opinion, but it could definitely be worse. So I feel like it's fairly priced at 372. Buy points on this one are 350 and 373. I am saying 373 is my ideal spot to buy, only because I'm banking on it being in the upper half of that uptrend for potentially longer. So again, I think now would be a decent time to pick it up. Resistance 395. That's a little ways away, about $20+. So we'll see what happens when we reach that point. Should happen by the end of the year. We'll know what happens. And then the note that we left ourselves, that uptrend since October, it's actually started accelerating since May, so a couple months. Could hit new all-time highs by end of year. Not much resistance in the way. Again, we'll just keep following this. But overall, I'd say fair value for this. But yeah, that wraps it up. So again, any questions, comments, let me know. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.